Rain was hammering against the windows that Tuesday evening. The kind of rain that makes you grateful to be indoors, wrapped in something warm. I was in the kitchen, stirring a pot of soup that nobody would probably eat. My husband would come home late, as usual, grab whatever leftovers he could find and disappear into his home office. That had become our routine. Actually, calling it a routine made it sound more intentional than it was. It was just what happened day after day. 15 years of marriage. People always told me the honeymoon phase wouldn't last forever, and they were right. But I didn't expect it to disappear so completely. I didn't expect to become two strangers sharing a mortgage and a last name. We weren't fighting. That might have been better, honestly. At least fighting means you still care enough to argue. We were just existing in the same space. I remembered our wedding day sometimes. How he looked at me like I was the only person in the room. How we'd stay up until 3 a.m. just talking about everything and nothing. How he'd leave little notes in my lunch bag before work. When did that stop? I couldn't pinpoint the exact moment. It was like watching a flower wilt. You don't notice it happening until one day you realize it's gone. The soup was almost ready when I heard something over the sound of the rain. A scratching noise at the front door. Then a whimper. Soft at first, then more insistent. I turned off the stove and walked to the door, curious and a little cautious. You never know what to expect at 8 o'clock on a dark, stormy night. When I opened the door, a pair of big brown eyes looked up at me. A dog. A golden retriever, soaking wet, covered in mud, shivering like a leaf in the wind. No collar, no tags, just a scared animal seeking shelter from the storm. The poor thing looked absolutely miserable, his golden fur matted and dark with rainwater. "Oh, you poor baby," I said, kneeling down. The dog didn't run away. Instead, he took a tentative step forward and pressed his cold, wet nose against my hand. My heart melted right there on the spot. I looked up and down the street, hoping to see someone searching for their lost pet. But the street was empty. Just rain, darkness, and this shivering dog on my porch. I knew I should probably think about this. We weren't dog people. We'd never had pets, not even a goldfish. My husband would probably have a dozen practical reasons why we couldn't take in a stray. The mess, the responsibility, the expense, the time commitment. I could already hear his objections. But looking into those pleading eyes, watching this creature shake from cold and fear, I couldn't just close the door. "Come on," I said, opening the door wider. "Let's get you out of this rain." The dog hesitated for just a moment as if he couldn't believe his luck, then trotted inside. He immediately shook himself, sending water droplets flying across our entryway. I should have been annoyed about the mess, but I found myself laughing instead. It felt good to laugh. I couldn't remember the last time something had genuinely amused me in this house. I grabbed some old towels from the linen closet and started drying him off as best I could. He stood patiently, occasionally licking my hand as if to say thank you. Under all that mud and water, he was actually beautiful. His coat was a warm golden color, and despite his obvious ordeal, his tail started wagging softly. "You're a friendly one, aren't you?" I said, rubbing behind his ears. His tail wagged harder. "I bet someone's looking for you. You're too sweet to be a stray." I set him up in the laundry room with more towels, a bowl of water, and some leftover chicken from the fridge. He ate like he hadn't seen food in days, which made my heart ache. How long had he been out there? Where did he come from? I took photos of him on my phone, planning to post them online and around the neighborhood. Someone had to be missing this dog. My husband came home around 9:30. I heard his car pull into the driveway, heard his keys in the door, heard his heavy sigh as he stepped inside. That sigh, that was new maybe from the last few years, like coming home was just another task to check off his list. "Hey," he called out, his voice flat. "Sorry I'm late. Henderson needed those reports tonight." "It's okay," I said, though we both knew it wasn't really okay. It was just what I always said. "I saved you some soup. It's on the stove." He walked into the kitchen, loosening his tie. He looked tired. He always looked tired lately. Dark circles under his eyes, shoulders slumped, that distant expression he wore like a mask. I wanted to reach out to him to ask if he was all right, but there was this invisible wall between us now. I didn't know how to get past it anymore. "There's something I need to tell you," I started, wondering how to break the news about our unexpected guest. That's when the dog decided to announce himself. A loud bark echoed from the laundry room, followed by scratching at the door. My husband's head snapped up, his eyes wide. "What was that?" "That's what I needed to tell you about," I said quickly. I found a dog on our porch. He was soaking wet and shivering. I couldn't just leave him outside. His expression shifted through several emotions: surprise, confusion, and then resignation mixed with irritation. "You brought a strange dog into our house?" He was freezing. "It's pouring rain." What was I supposed to do? Call animal control? Take him to a shelter? He rubbed his forehead, that gesture he did when he was stressed. "We can't just take in random animals." "It's just for tonight," I said, though I already knew it probably wouldn't be just for tonight. "I'll make flyers tomorrow, post online. Someone's probably looking for him." Another bark from the laundry room, more insistent this time. My husband sighed again, that deep, tired sigh. "Can I at least see this dog?" I opened the laundry room door and the golden retriever bounded out, tail wagging enthusiastically. He went straight to my husband, sniffing his shoes, his pants, looking up at him with those soulful brown eyes. My husband stood rigid, hands at his sides, clearly not knowing what to do. "He's big," he said. "He's friendly," I countered. "Look at him. He's a sweetheart." The dog sat down right in front of my husband, still staring up at him. Then, as if sensing he needed to win this man over, the dog offered his paw. It was such a perfectly timed gesture that I almost laughed. My husband looked down at the paw, then at the dog's face, then at me. "He's muddy," he said, but his voice had lost some of its edge. "I'll give him a proper bath tomorrow. Tonight he just needs somewhere warm to sleep." My husband didn't respond. He just stared at the dog, and the dog stared back. It was like they were having some kind of silent conversation. Finally, my husband bent down and shook the offered paw. The dog's tail went crazy, wagging so hard his whole body wiggled. "Just for tonight," my husband said, straightening up. "Tomorrow we find his owner or take him to a shelter." "Just for tonight," I agreed, knowing that tomorrow would probably bring a different story. I heated up the soup for my husband while the dog followed him around the kitchen, curious about this new human. My husband ate standing at the counter, checking his phone between bites, the dog sitting patiently at his feet. After he finished, he disappeared into his office like always. But I noticed him glance back at the dog before he closed the door. That night, I made a bed for the dog in the laundry room with blankets and pillows. He circled it a few times before settling down with a contented sigh. I knelt beside him, stroking his soft fur. "You can't stay forever, buddy," I whispered, "but you're safe tonight." He licked my hand and I felt tears prick my eyes. When was the last time I'd felt needed? When was the last time someone was happy to see me come into a room? This dog had been in my house for less than 3 hours and he'd already shown more affection than I'd received in months. I went upstairs to our bedroom. My husband was already in bed, facing away from me, probably scrolling through his phone. I changed into my pajamas and slipped under the covers, careful not to disturb him. We used to cuddle every night. Now we slept on opposite sides of a king-sized bed, a vast empty space between us. "Good night," I said softly. "Night," he mumbled, not turning around. I lay there in the darkness, listening to the rain, thinking about the dog downstairs, thinking about my marriage, thinking about how strange it was that a muddy stray could walk into your life and make you realize just how lonely you'd been. I didn't know it then, but that dog wasn't just seeking shelter from the storm. He was about to change everything. The next morning, I woke up early. The rain had stopped, leaving everything fresh and clean. I went downstairs to check on the dog and found him waiting patiently by the laundry room door, tail wagging the moment he saw me. I let him out into the backyard, and he immediately started exploring, sniffing every corner, marking his territory like he belonged here. I made coffee and started designing a found dog flyer on my laptop. Golden Retriever, male friendly, found on Oak Street. "If this is your dog, please call." I included the photo I'd taken the night before. Part of me hoped someone would call, but another part, a part I didn't want to admit to, hoped no one would. My husband came down around 7, already dressed for work. He poured himself coffee without a word, then noticed the dog through the kitchen window. "He's still here," he observed. "Where else would he be? I thought maybe he'd run off. Dogs do that, not this one apparently." We stood side by side at the window, watching the dog chase a butterfly around the yard. It should have been a peaceful moment, the two of us together, but the silence between us was uncomfortable, filled with all the things we weren't saying. "I'll print these flyers after work," I said, turning my laptop so he could see the screen, "and post on all the lost pet sites." He nodded, gulping his coffee. "Good, someone's probably worried sick." Then he grabbed his briefcase and headed for the door. No kiss goodbye. We'd stopped doing that years ago. I didn't even remember when or why. It just stopped happening, like so many other things. Have a good day, I called after him. You too. The door closed and I was alone again. Except I wasn't, not really. The dog scratched at the back door, wanting to come in. I opened it and he trotted inside, immediately coming to sit at my feet, looking up at me with those expressive eyes. What am I going to call you? I asked, scratching behind his ears. I can't just keep saying dog. He tilted his head as if considering the question. I thought about names. Max, Charlie, Cooper. They all seemed too common for this special dog who'd appeared in the storm. Then it came to me. Lucky, I said. Because you're lucky I found you. And maybe I'm lucky too. He barked once as if approving the name. From that moment on, he was lucky. And neither of us knew it yet. But Lucky was about to live up to his name in ways I never could have imagined. 3 weeks passed, and Lucky was still with us. I'd posted flyers everywhere. Coffee shops, grocery stores, veterinary clinics, telephone poles throughout the neighborhood. I'd shared his photo on every lost pet website I could find. I'd even paid for a sponsored post on social media to reach more people. Nothing. Not a single call, not one email, not even a text message from someone claiming to know him. Part of me felt guilty for how relieved I was. Every day that passed without someone claiming Lucky meant another day he could stay. And honestly, I couldn't imagine the house without him anymore. He'd become part of my daily routine so quickly, so naturally, that it felt like he'd always been there. My mornings started differently now. Instead of hitting snooze 3 times and dragging myself out of bed, I woke up to Lucky's cold nose pressed against my hand. His tail would be wagging, his eyes bright and eager, ready to start the day. How could you stay in bed when someone was that excited to see you awake? We'd go for walks before work, just the two of us. Lucky would trot beside me, stopping to sniff every interesting smell, his tail never stopping. Those morning walks became my favorite part of the day. The neighborhood looked different in the early light. Quieter, more peaceful. I'd see other dog walkers and we'd nod at each other, sharing that unspoken bond of people who understand the joy of a morning walk with a good dog. Work was still work. I was a nurse at the county hospital, 12-hour shifts that left me exhausted and sometimes heartbroken. But coming home meant Lucky would be waiting at the door, jumping and spinning in circles like I was the most important person in the world. My husband never greeted me like that. He barely looked up from his laptop anymore. The strange thing was, Lucky seemed to be affecting my husband too. I started noticing small changes, subtle shifts I almost missed at first. My husband still came home late most nights, still disappeared into his office after dinner. But now Lucky would follow him. I'd hear the office door open after a while, and my husband would let him in. Through the door I could hear my husband talking to Lucky. Not baby talk or silly voices, just normal conversation. Telling him about his day, about difficult clients, about office politics. One evening, about a month after Lucky arrived, I came home from a particularly brutal shift. We'd lost a patient, a young mother with 2 kids. I'd held her hand as she slipped away, and it broke something in me. I tried to hold it together during the drive home, but the moment I walked through the door and saw Lucky's happy face, the tears started falling. I dropped my bag and sank to the floor right there in the hallway. Lucky immediately pressed against me, his warm body solid and comforting. He licked the tears from my face, whimpering softly like he understood my pain. I buried my face in his fur and just cried. That's how my husband found us when he came home 20 minutes later. Me on the floor sobbing into Lucky's neck, the dog patiently holding still. My husband stood in the doorway, his briefcase in hand, clearly not knowing what to do. We didn't do this anymore. We didn't share our pain. We didn't comfort each other. We'd built these walls so high, neither of us knew how to climb over them. Bad day? He asked, his voice awkward. I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. He set down his briefcase and, after a long moment of hesitation, sat down on the floor next to me. Not touching, but close, closer than we'd been in a long time. Lucky shifted so his body was pressed against both of us like he was trying to bridge the gap between us. You want to talk about it? My husband asked. I shook my head. Not really. It's just hard sometimes. We sat there in silence. It should have been uncomfortable, but it wasn't. Lucky's presence made it okay somehow. Like he gave us permission to just be there together without needing to fill the space with words. After a while, my husband reached out and patted Lucky's head. His hand was close enough to mine that our fingers almost touched. Almost. "He's a good dog," my husband said quietly. "Yeah," I whispered. "He really is." That night marked a shift. It was small, barely noticeable, but it was there. My husband came out of his office earlier than usual. He sat on the couch instead of going straight to bed. Lucky immediately jumped up next to him, something I'd trained him not to do on the furniture, but I didn't say anything. My husband didn't push him away. Instead, he started absently stroking Lucky's fur, his fingers running through that soft golden coat. I was in the kitchen, pretending to organize the pantry but really just watching them. My husband's face looked different, softer, less tired. His shoulders weren't hunched up around his ears like they usually were. He was just sitting there, petting the dog, watching some nature documentary on TV. It was the most relaxed I'd seen him in years. I made tea and brought him a cup without asking if he wanted one. He looked up surprised and took it with a small smile. A real smile, not the tight, polite one he usually gave me. "Thanks," he said. I sat in the chair across from him, cradling my own cup. We watched the documentary together. Not talking, just existing in the same space. Lucky's head was in my husband's lap and he kept petting him. These long, soothing strokes. I realized I was jealous of the dog. When was the last time my husband touched me like that? With such simple, uncomplicated affection? The weeks continued and the pattern repeated. My husband started coming home earlier. Not every day, but more often than before. He'd change out of his work clothes and take Lucky for a walk around the block. Sometimes I'd watch them from the window. My husband would throw a tennis ball and Lucky would bound after it, bringing it back with his tail wagging like crazy. My husband would laugh. Actually laugh. I'd almost forgotten what his laugh sounded like. One Saturday morning, I woke up to an empty bed. This was unusual. My husband always slept late on weekends, making up for the early mornings during the week. I got up and went looking for him, expecting to find him in his office catching up on work. But his office was empty. So was the living room, the kitchen. I looked out the back window and there he was, in the yard with Lucky, throwing a tennis ball over and over. But it wasn't just the game that caught my attention. It was the expression on his face, pure joy, the kind of joy I remembered from our early years together, before life got complicated and heavy. Lucky would catch the ball, bring it back, drop it at his feet, and my husband would throw it again, laughing every single time. I made coffee and watched them through the window. My husband was actually playing, not checking his phone, not thinking about work, just fully present in the moment with this dog. When had he last been fully present with me? Later that afternoon, I was doing laundry when I found something in my husband's nightstand. I wasn't snooping, not really. I was looking for the phone charger I thought he'd borrowed. Instead, I found a journal, a leather-bound notebook I'd never seen before. My husband wasn't a journal person. In 15 years of marriage, I'd never known him to write down his thoughts. I knew I shouldn't read it. Privacy, boundaries, all of that. But my hand was already opening it before my brain could stop me. The first entry was dated 2 weeks after Lucky arrived. Came home today and the dog was waiting at the door. Not for food or to go out. Just waiting. Like he was genuinely happy I was home. When was the last time anyone was happy to see me? When was the last time I was happy to see myself? I turned the page, my heart pounding. Took the dog for a walk tonight. Didn't plan to. Just happened. We walked for an hour. I wasn't thinking about the Henderson account or the deadline or the mortgage. I was just walking. Just breathing. Just being. I can't remember the last time I felt this calm. Another entry from a few days later. The dog sits with me in my office now. Doesn't ask for anything. Doesn't need me to perform or produce or achieve. He just sits there. And somehow that makes everything feel less heavy. Is this what peace feels like? I'd forgotten. I kept reading, tears streaming down my face. Page after page of my husband's private thoughts. About Lucky, yes, but also about us. About our marriage. About his regrets. I see the way she looks at the dog, with such love and openness. She used to look at me like that. When did I stop deserving that look? When did I become someone who comes home late and disappears into his office? When did I turn into my father? That line hit me like a punch. My husband's father had been distant, cold, always working. My husband had sworn he'd never be like that. But somehow, without either of us noticing, he'd become exactly what he'd feared. Another entry, more recent. Today I watched the dog comfort her when she came home crying. He didn't hesitate, didn't overthink it, just went to her and stayed close. I stood there like an idiot, not knowing what to do. I used to know what to do. I used to be the one she turned to. How did I forget how to be there for her? The most recent entry was from yesterday. The dog looks at me like I matter, like my presence is a gift, not an obligation. I can't remember the last time I made her feel that way. I can't remember the last time I felt that way about myself. But watching this dog, his simple joy, his unconditional love, it's waking something up in me, something I thought was dead. Maybe it's not too late. Maybe I can still be the man she deserves, the man I used to be. I closed the journal carefully, my hands shaking. I put it back exactly where I'd found it. Then I went to the bathroom and sobbed into a towel so no one would hear. Not sad tears exactly. Hopeful tears maybe. Scared tears. Tears of possibility. That evening, my husband did something he hadn't done in 15 years. After dinner, instead of retreating to his office, he turned to me and asked, "Want to watch a movie?" I stared at him, not sure I'd heard correctly. "A movie?" "Yeah, together if you want." Lucky was already on the couch, taking up most of it. We sat on either side of him, the dog between us like a furry buffer zone. My husband picked some action movie, something we both could enjoy without thinking too hard. Lucky's head was on my lap, his back legs stretched toward my husband. We were connected through the dog, our hands occasionally brushing his fur at the same time. Halfway through the movie, my husband's hand moved from Lucky's back to the couch cushion between us, just resting there. Not reaching for me, but not pulling away either. An invitation, maybe, or just an accident. I wasn't sure. Lucky shifted, moving his head to my husband's lap instead, and suddenly there was empty space between us, space that felt both vast and tiny at the same time. I thought about that journal entry, about my husband wanting to be the man I deserved, about him watching Lucky and remembering how to be present. My hand moved, almost of its own accord, across that empty space. My fingers touched his. He didn't pull away. Instead, his hand turned over and held mine. Just like that. Simple and complicated all at once. We sat there holding hands, watching the movie, the dog snoring softly between us. It wasn't a grand gesture. No declarations of love, no big apology, no dramatic moment. Just two people holding hands on a couch with their dog. But it felt like something. Like a door opening. Like maybe, just maybe, we could find our way back to each other. Lucky lifted his head and looked at both of us, his tail thumping against the couch. Then he put his head back down and sighed contentedly, like he knew something we were just beginning to figure out, that sometimes healing starts with the smallest gestures, a walk, a pat on the head, a hand reaching across empty space, and sometimes it takes a dog to remind us how. The morning started like any other Saturday. I woke up to Lucky's nose pressed against my cheek, his tail already wagging. My husband was still asleep beside me, which was normal for a weekend. What wasn't normal was that his hand was resting on my hip, not intentionally maybe. He could have rolled over in his sleep and it just landed there. But it had been so long since we'd touched in bed that even this accidental contact made my heart race a little. I carefully slid out from under his hand, not wanting to wake him. Lucky followed me downstairs, his nails clicking on the hardwood floors. I made coffee and let him out into the backyard. The sun was just coming up, painting everything in soft golden light. It was going to be a beautiful day. I was scrolling through my phone, reading the news, when Lucky started barking. Not his usual playful bark, but something more urgent. I looked up and saw him at the back fence, his whole body tense, barking at something in the neighbor's yard. Before I could call him back, he squeezed through a gap in the fence I didn't even know existed and disappeared. "Lucky," I shouted, running to the back door. "Lucky, come back." I heard more barking, then a woman's voice, high and panicked. I ran through our gate and around to the neighbor's yard. Mrs. Chen, the elderly woman who lived alone next door, was on the ground near her porch steps. Lucky was standing over her, not threatening, but protective. He'd stopped barking and was now whimpering, looking from her to me and back again. "Mrs. Chen," I rushed over, my nursing instincts kicking in immediately. "Are you okay? What happened?" "I fell," she said, her voice shaky. She was holding her wrist at an odd angle. I was bringing in the newspaper and missed the step. I think I broke something. I knelt beside her, gently examining her wrist. It was already swelling. Definitely broken, or at least badly sprained. "Don't move. I'm calling an ambulance." "Oh no, that's too much fuss," she protested, but I could see the pain in her eyes. "You need an X-ray. Trust me, I'm a nurse." I pulled out my phone and dialed while Lucky sat down next to Mrs. Chen, resting his head gently on her good arm. She looked down at him, surprised. "Is this your dog?" she asked. "I've seen you walking him." "Yeah, that's Lucky. He must have heard you fall." "Smart dog," she said, and reached out with her good hand to pat his head. "Thank you, boy." The ambulance arrived within 10 minutes. By then, my husband had come outside in his pajama pants and t-shirt, hair sticking up in every direction. He looked confused and worried. "What happened?" he asked, taking in the scene. "Mrs. Chen fell. Broken wrist, I think." I was giving information to the paramedics who I actually knew from the hospital. Lucky heard her and alerted me. My husband looked at Lucky with something like amazement. The dog was still sitting calmly next to Mrs. Chen, as if he understood his job was to stay with her until she was safe. One of the paramedics reached down to pet him. "Good dog," the paramedic said. "You might have saved her from lying out here for hours." They loaded Mrs. Chen into the ambulance. She insisted she'd be fine, that her daughter would meet her at the hospital. I promised to check on her later. As the ambulance pulled away, my husband and I stood in her yard with Lucky between us. "That was incredible," my husband said, still looking at Lucky. "How did he know?" "Dogs just sense things sometimes," I said. "They're more aware than we give them credit for." My husband bent down and wrapped his arms around Lucky's neck, pulling him into a hug. It was such an unguarded moment, so full of genuine affection, that I felt tears prick my eyes. Lucky's tail wagged and he licked my husband's face, making him laugh. "You're a hero, buddy," my husband said softly. "A real hero." We walked back to our house together, the three of us. My husband's hand found mine as we walked, and this time I knew it wasn't an accident. He was choosing to hold my hand, choosing to be close. It was such a simple thing, holding hands, but it felt monumental. "I was thinking," he said as we reached our front door, "maybe we should do something today, together, the three of us." I looked at him, surprised. "Like what?" "I don't know. Maybe drive out to that state park? The one with the hiking trails. Lucky would probably love it." "You want to go hiking?" This was the man who spent every weekend in his office, the man who said he was too busy for day trips or adventures. "Yeah," he said, and he actually looked excited. "I mean, if you want to. We don't have to." "No, I want to," I said quickly. "That sounds really nice." An hour later, we were in the car heading out of the city. Lucky sat in the back seat, his head out the window, ears flapping in the wind. My husband was driving, and I was in the passenger seat with my hand resting on the console between us. After a few minutes, his hand covered mine. Not holding it exactly, just resting on top of it. Connected. We didn't talk much during the drive, but it wasn't the heavy silence we'd lived with for years. It was comfortable, natural. The radio played softly, some classic rock station, and my husband hummed along to a song I remembered from our dating days. I'd forgotten he used to do that. Hum along to music. When had he stopped? The state park was about 40 minutes outside the city, nestled in rolling hills covered with trees. It was beautiful. We parked and got Lucky's leash, though he was so well behaved he barely needed it. The trail we chose was marked as moderate difficulty, 3 miles through the woods with a lookout point at the halfway mark. It had been years since I'd hiked. Years since we'd done anything like this together. My husband used to love the outdoors when we first met. We'd spend weekends camping, hiking, exploring. Then life got busy. Work got demanding. We stopped making time for things that didn't seem urgent. How did we let that happen? Lucky trotted ahead of us, occasionally stopping to sniff something interesting or mark a tree. My husband and I walked side by side, our shoulders occasionally bumping. The trail was narrow in places, forcing us close together. I didn't mind. Neither did he. "This is nice," he said after we'd been walking for about 20 minutes. "Really nice. I forgot how much I liked this." "Me too," I admitted. "We should have done this years ago." "Yeah." He was quiet for a moment, then added, "I should have done a lot of things years ago." I didn't know what to say to that, so I just reached for his hand. He took it immediately, squeezing my fingers. We walked like that, hand in hand, following Lucky up the trail. It felt like we were teenagers again, like we were just beginning, not trying to find our way back. We reached the lookout point and stopped to catch our breath. The view was stunning. Miles of forest stretched out below us, the trees 1,000 shades of green. Lucky sat down at the edge, panting happily, looking out over the vista like he was appreciating it too. "I've been an idiot," my husband said suddenly. He wasn't looking at me but at the view. "For years I've been an idiot." "That's not true," I started, but he shook his head. "It is. I let work take over everything. I stopped being present, stopped being a husband." He turned to look at me now and his eyes were red. "I stopped being the person you married." "We both changed," I said softly. "That's what happens. But I changed into someone I never wanted to be. Someone like my dad." He swallowed hard, and I didn't even notice until Lucky showed up. "The dog?" "Yeah, the dog." He laughed, but it wasn't a happy sound. "It took a stray dog to wake me up, to show me what I'd lost. Do you know what I realized? Lucky is excited to see me every single day. Every single time I come home, he acts like it's the best part of his day." And I thought, when did I stop being excited to come home? When did I start treating my own life like an obligation? I felt tears running down my face. "I didn't know you felt that way." "I didn't either. Not until Lucky." He wiped his eyes with the back of his hand. Watching him, the way he loved so completely, so simply. No conditions, no walls, no fear. Just pure affection. I remembered that I used to be like that with you. We used to be like that with each other. Lucky came over and pushed his nose into my husband's hand, sensing the emotion. My husband crouched down and buried his face in Lucky's fur for a moment, composing himself. When he stood back up, he took both my hands in his. "I know I can't fix 15 years in one conversation," he said. "I know I've hurt you by being absent, by choosing work over us, over you. But I want to try. I want to be the man you deserve. The man I used to be. The man Lucky seems to think I am." I was crying fully now, not bothering to wipe the tears away. "I want that too. I've wanted it for so long." "I'm sorry," he whispered, pulling me into his arms. "I'm so sorry." We stood there holding each other on that mountain lookout, Lucky sitting patiently at our feet. It was the first real hug we'd shared in years. Not a polite side hug or a quick squeeze, but a real embrace. I could feel his heart beating against my chest, feel his breath in my hair. I'd forgotten how good it felt to be held by him. "We can figure this out," I said into his shoulder. "We can find our way back." "Yeah," he agreed. "We can." Lucky barked once as if in agreement, and we both laughed. My husband pulled back and cupped my face in his hands, looking at me like he used to look at me all those years ago. Like I was precious. Like I mattered. "I love you," he said. I never stopped. I just forgot how to show it. "I love you too," I whispered. He kissed me then, soft and gentle like a first kiss, like a promise. Lucky barked again, louder this time, and we broke apart laughing. Okay, my husband said to the dog. "We get it. You're part of this too." We sat down on a bench at the lookout, Lucky between us, both of us petting him. My head rested on my husband's shoulder, his arm around me. We stayed like that for a long time, just breathing, just being. Together in a way we hadn't been in years. The hike back down was different from the hike up. We talked more, reminiscing about our early years together, making plans for things we wanted to do. Small things like trying that new restaurant downtown or finally painting the bedroom. Big things like maybe taking a real vacation next year. Not solving all our problems, but opening doors we'd kept closed for too long. On the drive home, my husband reached over and took my hand again. This time he brought it to his lips and kissed my knuckles, something he used to do when we were dating. Such a small gesture, but it made me feel more loved than I had in years. "Thank you," I said. "For what?" "For today. For trying. For coming back to me," he squeezed my hand. "Thank you for waiting. For not giving up on us." Lucky was passed out in the back seat, exhausted from his adventure. He'd brought us to this moment, this man and this dog. He'd shown my husband how to be present again, how to love without fear or walls. He'd reminded us both what we'd lost and what we could still have. That night, we ordered pizza and ate it on the couch, all three of us. We watched a movie, but I couldn't tell you what it was about because I spent the whole time just enjoying being close to my husband again. His arm around me, my head on his chest, Lucky snoring at our feet. A family. We were finally feeling like a family again. Before bed, my husband took Lucky out for his final walk of the day. Through the window, I watched them in the glow of the streetlight. My husband threw a ball, Lucky chased it, and for a moment everything felt right. Everything felt possible. A dog had done something my husband hadn't done in 15 years. He'd shown up. He'd been present. He'd loved without holding back, and somehow that had taught my husband how to do the same. I woke up on Monday morning to the smell of coffee. Not just coffee brewing in the kitchen, which would have been surprising enough, but coffee on my nightstand still steaming, waiting for me. Next to it was a note written on a sticky pad. Took Lucky for his morning walk. Didn't want to wake you. You work too hard. Love you. I picked up the note and read it 3 times, making sure I wasn't dreaming. My husband had made me coffee and brought it to me in bed. He'd taken Lucky out so I could sleep in. He'd written a love note. These were things that hadn't happened in our marriage for so long that they felt like relics from another life. I heard the front door open and Lucky's excited panting as they came back inside. My husband's footsteps on the stairs getting closer. He appeared in the doorway, still in his jogging clothes, looking slightly out of breath but happy. Really genuinely happy. "You're awake," he said, smiling. I was trying to be quiet. "You brought me coffee," I said, holding up the mug like evidence. I did. He came and sat on the edge of the bed. Lucky jumped up too, which normally would have annoyed me, but today I didn't care. I figured after all those years of you making coffee for me, it was my turn. All those years, I repeated softly. "You noticed?" "I'm noticing a lot of things lately." He leaned over and kissed my forehead. Just a simple kiss, but it made my whole body warm. "I've got to shower and get ready for work, but I was thinking, what if we had dinner tonight? Like a real dinner. I could come home at a normal time. We could cook together or order from that Italian place you like. You want to have dinner together? On a Monday? Is that weird?" He looked suddenly uncertain, like maybe he'd overstepped. "No," I said quickly, reaching for his hand. "It's perfect. It's just different." "Good different." He squeezed my hand and smiled. "Good different. I like that." The day at work dragged on forever. I kept checking my phone, half expecting a text saying he'd have to work late, that something urgent came up, that dinner would have to wait. But instead at 3 o'clock I got a message. "Leaving the office at 5:30, home by 6, can't wait to see you." My heart did this little flip that I hadn't felt in years. Excitement. Actual excitement about my husband coming home. When had that become something unusual? When had I stopped looking forward to seeing him? I left work right on time, something I rarely did. Usually I'd stay late, pick up extra shifts, volunteer for overtime. Not because we needed the money, but because going home to an empty house, or worse, a house where my husband was physically present but emotionally absent, felt lonelier than just staying at work. But today I rushed home. I wanted to beat him there, wanted to be the one waiting for once. Lucky greeted me at the door like always, like I'd been gone for years instead of hours. I changed out of my scrubs, fed Lucky, and started tidying up the living room. Not because the house was messy, but because I needed something to do with my nervous energy. At exactly 6 o'clock I heard his car in the driveway. Lucky's ears perked up and he ran to the door, tail wagging like crazy. I followed, trying to play it cool, trying not to seem too eager. But when the door opened and my husband walked in with a bouquet of flowers, I couldn't help the huge smile that spread across my face. "You brought flowers," I said. Stating the obvious, I did. He handed them to me, looking almost shy. I passed that flower shop on Main Street and just thought, why not? "When's the last time I bought you flowers?" "Our anniversary. 3 years ago," he winced. "That long?" "That long. Well, that's changing. Starting now." He loosened his tie and bent down to greet Lucky, who was doing his usual spinning dance of joy. "Hey, buddy. Did you miss me?" "I missed you too." Watching him with Lucky still amazed me. This man who'd become so closed off, so distant, was openly affectionate with this dog. No hesitation, no self-consciousness, just pure simple love. And lately some of that openness was starting to extend back to me. I put the flowers in a vase while my husband changed clothes. When he came back downstairs in jeans and a t-shirt, looking more relaxed than I'd seen him in years, he asked, "So, are we cooking or ordering?" "Let's cook," I said. It's been a while since we cooked together. We decided on pasta, something simple but nice. He chopped vegetables while I boiled water and made sauce. We moved around the kitchen in this awkward dance at first, not quite remembering how to share the space. But gradually it became easier, more natural. He'd pass me the salt without me asking. I'd stir his pan when he needed both hands. Little moments of teamwork we'd forgotten how to do. Lucky lay on the kitchen floor watching us with his head on his paws, perfectly content to just be near us. Every now and then one of us would reach down to pet him, and his tail would thump against the floor. You know what's funny? My husband said, stirring the vegetables. I used to hate coming home from work. Not hate home, exactly, but I'd sit in the driveway sometimes, just sitting there dreading coming inside. Really? I stopped stirring the sauce to look at him. Yeah, I didn't know why at the time, but now I think it was because I knew I was supposed to be someone when I walked through that door. A husband. A partner. And I didn't know how to be those things anymore, so I'd just avoid it. Stay at work longer, sit in the car, make excuses. He looked at me, his eyes sad. But now I can't wait to get home. I actually leave the office thinking about coming here, about seeing you and Lucky, about having dinner together, real dinner, not just eating standing at the counter. What changed? I asked, though I thought I knew the answer. He glanced down at Lucky. Him. He changed everything. You know what he taught me? That being present is actually easy. You just show up. You just be there. No performance, no pressure, just presence. And when you do that, the love follows naturally. I felt tears stinging my eyes. That's beautiful. It's true. He set down the spoon and came over to me, taking my face in his hands. I'm here now. Really here. And I'm not going anywhere. He kissed me, soft and slow, and for a moment the kitchen disappeared. It was just us, really us for the first time in so long. When we pulled apart, something was burning. The vegetables. He laughed and rushed back to his pan, stirring frantically. They were a little charred on the bottom, but mostly salvageable. Guess I got distracted. Best distraction ever, I said, grinning. We ate at the dining room table, the fancy one we only used for holidays. My husband lit candles, poured wine, even put on some soft music. It felt like a date, like we were courting each other again. We talked about everything and nothing. He told me about a funny thing that happened at work, something he never would have shared before. I told him about a patient who'd made me laugh. We made plans for the weekend, talked about maybe redecorating the living room, discussed whether we should finally take that trip to the mountains we'd been putting off for 5 years. Lucky sat under the table, occasionally resting his head on one of our laps. We both slipped him little pieces of food when the other wasn't looking, and then laughed when we realized we were both doing it. After dinner, my husband insisted on doing the dishes. You cooked most of it, he said. I'll clean. I sat at the kitchen counter watching him wash plates and load the dishwasher. Such a mundane task, but it felt intimate somehow. Domestic in the best way. He caught me staring and smiled. What? He asked. Nothing. Just watching you. Am I doing it wrong? You're doing it perfectly. When the kitchen was clean, he dried his hands and pulled out his phone. I want to show you something, he said, scrolling through his photos. I've been taking pictures. Of Lucky mostly, but also other stuff. I started about a month ago. He showed me his camera roll. Pictures of Lucky sleeping in sunbeams, Lucky playing in the backyard, Lucky with his favorite toy, but also pictures of our house, our street, the sunrise from our bedroom window, little moments captured like they mattered. I never noticed how beautiful ordinary things could be, he said quietly. I was always too busy looking ahead, planning the next thing, worrying about tomorrow. Lucky lives in the moment, you know? Every moment is important to him. Every walk is the best walk. Every meal is the best meal. Every person he loves is the most important person in the world right then. I wanted to try seeing things his way. There was a photo of me in there too. I was sitting in the backyard with Lucky, laughing at something, completely unaware I was being photographed. I looked happy, really truly happy. When did you take this? I asked. Last week, Saturday morning. You were drinking coffee and Lucky was trying to steal your toast. He smiled at the memory. You looked so beautiful, so at peace. I realized I couldn't remember the last time I'd really looked at you, really seen you. So I took a picture to remind myself to keep looking. I was crying now, not even trying to hide it. Happy tears, grateful tears, tears for what we'd lost and what we were finding again. I love you, I said. I never stopped even when things were hard, even when we felt like strangers. I love you too, and I promise I'm going to keep showing up, every single day. That night we watched TV on the couch like we'd been doing more often lately, but tonight felt different. Closer. My husband pulled me against his chest, his arms around me, his chin resting on top of my head. Lucky sprawled across both our laps, creating a warm, heavy blanket of fur. We stayed like that for hours, not really paying attention to the TV, just being together. Before bed, my husband took Lucky out for his final walk. I watched them from the window like I'd been doing lately. But tonight, when they came back in, my husband came straight to me. He pulled me close and just held me, swaying slightly like we were dancing to music only we could hear. "Thank you," he whispered into my hair. "For what?" "For not giving up on us. For being patient. For still being here, always, I promised. I'll always be here." We went upstairs together, hands linked. Lucky followed, settling into his bed at the foot of ours. My husband and I lay facing each other, something we hadn't done in years. Usually we'd sleep back to back, the distance between us a canyon. But tonight we were close. His hand traced patterns on my arm, my fingers running through his hair. "This is nice," he said softly. "Yeah, it really is. I want every night to be like this. Coming home to you. Having dinner together. Just being together. No distractions, no excuses." "That sounds perfect." He kissed me goodnight, sweet and tender. Then he pulled me close, my back against his chest, his arm draped over my waist. Lucky sighed contentedly from his bed. And for the first time in 15 years, I fell asleep feeling completely loved, completely safe, completely home. The dog had done something my husband hadn't done in 15 years. He'd shown up. He'd been present. He'd loved openly and honestly. And in doing so, he'd taught my husband how to do the same. Our marriage wasn't fixed overnight. We still had work to do, conversations to have, patterns to break, and new ones to build. But we were trying, really trying, and that made all the difference. As I drifted off to sleep in my husband's arms, I sent a silent thank you to that muddy, shivering dog who'd shown up on our doorstep in a rainstorm. Lucky had saved more than himself that night. He'd saved us all.